Hello everybody and welcome back to the Fortress of Solitude. Today we're going to be checking out Kneel Before ZOD issue 8 by Joe Casey and Dan McDade. It's the Battle of Fathers as Sinestro confronts General Zod in his prison ship, leading to them both getting into a violent battle in the vacuum of space, ending with both unleashing their full power, putting on quite the light show for the prisoners aboard the ship. Neither Zod or Sinestro is the winner, instead coming to a respectful understanding that each is very powerful, and I like that there is the hint that Sinestro kind of ended the battle after realizing that Zod is a Kryptonian, kind of realizing that Kryptonians are probably a bit more powerful than a ring wielder, so he kind of knows when he's beat. This is very interesting since Casey frames this as the first meeting between Zod and Sinestro, and thinking of it, I can't actually think they have met before. I do think in the New 52 they technically met by being part of Suicide Squad, I do believe. At one point their paths crossed, but I think in the Dawn of DC they actually have not met each other yet. Sinestro reveals that he's been tracking a familiar emerald signature, that being the Emerald Empress, whom Zod dealt with the last issue, and being there's nothing for Sinestro there now, they find themselves at an impasse. Zod eventually invites Sinestro aboard the ship, while the crew meanwhile try and sort out the ship's engines, which were damaged during Empress's attack. I do wish we had gotten a little bit more time with the crew, or at least fleshed them out a little bit longer as a supporting cast. They're a nice mixture of races, with Mers as the center of them, and being that bridge between the prisoners and Zod. He's that sort of middleman that kind of talks with the prisoners and sort of sorts things out with Zod. The prisoners all make it known that they are very not happy with Zod, as they have been over the last couple of issues, and want his head on a pike, wanting to use Mers to get close to Zod and to strike from within. Mers has become a little bit like Zod's hype man, as he's seen what he's capable of, and he knows he is a very capable Kryptonian. Just being Kryptonian and near a yellow sun makes him better than everyone else, and I like that Zur is only interested in himself, but he is also happy to placate to Zod because he knows that if he does, he'll keep his head. Whereas if these other guys just keep talking and just disobeying Zod, Zod's just gonna, like in the last issue, freeze their heads and kick it around like a soccer ball. He knows how to keep his head down and do what is necessary to survive, and I quite like that, and kind of wish we got a little bit more with this character. Zod meanwhile learns that the ship is effectively dead in the water and that they would be best to abandon the ship, and it's Sinestro that offers a solution to their problems, knowing Zod is staying away from Tharos and the obviously corrupted United Planets, which had caused both Zod and Sinestro's planets to suffer. So I like that there's that common enemy there. They both really hate the United Planets and what they stand for. Sinestro tells Zod about the planetoid called Talos, which is kind of like a giant salvage dump overseen by a bunch of pirates, and it's quite close to the prison ship's location, only a few sectors away. So this is actually the end of Sinestro's part in the book, and it's such a strange role for him since he literally just flew in, they had a little bit of a fight, and he told Zod where to go and then just kind of leaves. I was sure that once both found out that they are fighting the common enemy with the United Planets, they would somewhat team up, but I guess Sinestro does have a through-line story over in the Jeremy Adams Green Lantern book at the moment, so I imagine this was kind of like seen as a bit of a cameo sort of situation where, you know, he's flying between planets and he saw Zod, stuff like that, whereas I'm sure Jeremy's going to continue the story over in the backups of Green Lantern sometime soon. I do really like this brief bonding moment these men have over their respective enemies though, with Green Lantern and Superman coming up in conversation, and how both men always seem to come back to fighting these ones and they view them as their antagonists more or less, and I quite like that as that righteousness that both these men have, where they both think they are absolutely right in what they are doing and that Superman and Green Lantern are the ones who are the enemy. Sinestro also brings up that he recently saw Zod's son Lor-Zod over in that Sinister Sons book, and Zod gives kind of the best response in that he doesn't really give a shit. He knows his son is off on his own adventure, he doesn't really care, but there is that kind of line where he talks about the House of Zod enduring, and I kind of took that as like he's a little bit happy to know that his son is still alive out there and that his house will continue. After Sinestro leaves, Zod gets the ship underway in probably the most metal way possible, using a constant blast of his heat vision to propel the ship forward in space, and he does this for like days and days, which is kind of a testament to just how strong Zod is in his powers. Like he's using his heat vision, which is effectively draining him of energy because it's outputting energy, and he uses it for days and days, and that's really damn cool. That's a really cool use of that power, very creative use of the heat vision power. The ship eventually arrives at the salvage dump and the prisoners begin looking for parts they need to fix the engine, while Zod has one final confrontation with the figment of Jor-El in his mind he's been haunted by throughout this entire series. The whole battle with Jor-El in Zod's mind has been sort of this highlight for the series for me because it's so different than what we usually get with Zod. Usually he's a very physical being, but this is a very psychological thing for him to deal with, and he can't really deal with it. And I really love the idea that this isn't like some ghost of Jor-El haunting him. This is his own mind who has like manifested all his doubts in himself and what he is to do with his life in the visage of Jor-El, and kind of projected Jor-El out as like this culmination of like all his doubts and everything that sort of haunts his mind. And I think that's really damn cool. That's such a cool use of Jor-El. The Jor-El illusion taunts Zod even more, effectively telling him that his time as a general and conqueror is now over. Again, this is his own mind telling him this, and this is something he's been dealing with throughout this entire book, where Zod has been kind of lost on what to do now that he had his own family, he had his own planet. Where does this despotic king go from here? And Jor-El's words about him stealing salvage and cavorting with prisoners causes him to attack the visage of Jor-El in a blind rage. And I love the line that Jor-El gets here where Zod screams about his family and world being taken from him, and Jor-El reminds him that his own son Kal-El lost his family and lost his father and world, but he didn't turn into a despotic murderer, and there's like some balance there because of that, because one went bad, the other one didn't. There's a little bit of balance there, and Jor-El's words cause Zod to vow to find Superman and kill him and everything he loves, which I feel like is then positioning Zod to make a return to Earth at some point in the near future, probably in some big Superman-centric event where he's the main villain. Zod's words turn Jor-El into stone and finally destroy him, which I guess is a great visual signal to us that Zod has finally found his purpose. He's moved past all of these doubts basically, and he has found his purpose, which is to sow chaos, and I guess his end goal is to confront Superman again. And that's actually kind of great, because this is like Joe Casey putting the toys back in the box almost, and kind of returning Zod to that classic purpose he always has, where it's to battle Superman, but he adds that extra weight to it that is just beyond an evil Kryptonian battling a good Kryptonian. There's all this stuff with the family he's had and how that was taken from him, and there'd probably be some sort of through line where him and Superman have some sort of shared knowledge of that, like they both had their families taken from them at one point or another, so there's like a bonding thing they could probably do there. Really interesting where Casey has sort of positioned Zod now in the DCU. Zod's fight with Jor-El ends just in time as the crew fix the ship and they leave the salvage dump, and Zod decides to give the crew a direction finally, deciding it's time for them to cause their own type of chaos in a galaxy filled with chaos, and they will begin with Kundia, the home of the Kund who attacked his world and killed his wife. And that is where the book ends, not just in this issue but for good as well, because of course this is the final issue of the series, at least for now, as the book stresses enough that this is the end of Zod's story for now, and we'll probably see Zod make a return in the coming months in something. Overall, Joe Casey and Dan McDade's Zod-centric series was a total win for me. It took a character we've seen a lot of and gave him much needed refresh on every level, building up his character in a very interesting way that isn't solely relying on Superman, or in Zod's classical fashion of just being a very physical character. This was a very psychological adventure for Zod, and for him to deal with his own mind as a villain is very interesting. I'm very excited to see where Zod turns up next and where his newfound purpose will take the character in the DCU. I'm going to give this issue a 9 out of 10.